And welcome. This is a wonderful summit for women writers and publishing professionals. My name's Deborah Herman, and my company is Author Branding Solutions. It's a division of Micropublishing Media. That's an indie publishing company with author services, editorial services, and consulting. I also publish niche titles. But I'm here today to talk to you about author branding solutions because I believe, after many, many years in the publishing industry, that this is what authors need to succeed. It doesn't matter how you're publishing your book. Maybe you're being published by a large traditional publisher. Maybe you're being published by a hybrid publisher. Maybe you're completely do it yourself and you're self publishing. Whatever it is that you're doing, you need to have an author brand because otherwise you're missing out on the greatest opportunity for you to be found by your readers. Or if you're looking for a publishing deal with a large publishing house, you need to have an online presence. So let's just talk a little bit about the history of publishing. I've been in the publishing industry, I hate to say it, for uh, actually over 30 years. I began as a writer, then I became part of a literary agency with my now husband, Jeff Herman, and I was curating titles. And the industry was really different back then. We would get physical submissions. We, at one point in our office, had an entire walk in closet that was called Ye Old Slush Room. And we would get tons and tons of manuscripts to weed through and to find those gems that we as a literary agency could then sell to a publishing house. Back in those days, there were a lot of opportunities for unknown authors if they had the right topic and the right approach. And it wasn't as big of a concern whether or not they already had an established market, access to that market. It's whether or not there was a market and whether the topic was well done, was described well, and could be potentially acquired by a publishing house or represented by an agent. In our case, of course, represented by us, a nonfiction agency, and whether we could be successful with it. It was very different back then because there was what was called a mid list. In those days, there were a lot of independent publishers, small presses, even what would be now considered part of a very large publishing concern. They were actually considered indie, and they had room on their acquisition list for titles that they liked because they thought the subject matter could be evergreen. What that means is they could take it from this mid list, put it on their back list, and over the years, they could continue to sell the book. It would stay in print and they would earn money on an ongoing basis. It became an annuity. Well, a lot of things changed. Several things happened over the years, and we, of course, observed this from where we were sitting because, as a nonfiction agency, we saw that midlist titles weren't selling in the same way. What happened is, starting in about the early 2000s, mid 2000s, maybe even a little earlier, but mostly toward the mid 2000s, a lot of these smaller publishing houses were they were eaten up by these huge multimedia concerns, many of which were not even American companies. So if you have to think of it, these are very large companies. They're looking to add these other assets to their big portfolio. They're not in love with publishing. Publishing is just a very small part of what it is that they do. So, unless they're acquiring a title that has a very big name associated with it, they weren't as interested. And so the opportunities to sell books to the larger publishing conglomerates became less and less. And then another change that happened is, in back in the day, so to speak. Again, I'm dating myself. You could have some support by your publishing house for marketing and promotion, but they're not as willing or interested in doing that anymore. I hate to say it, but gone are the days when you have a good book and your publishing house is going to make you rich and famous. They're not going to do that. Even if you are acquired and there is a publicity budget, they're going to focus on your title for about 2 months. And then the expectation is you'll run with it, or they're going to move on to the next best thing. That's the business reality of the publishing industry. And indeed, it wasn't always like that. But you're not, as a writer today, you need to shift your expectation. You're not going to be sipping champagne in Martha's Vineyard unless you already have a house there. You're not going to do it. Now, you can do it, but you're going to be the one who has to do it. You can't expect your publishing house to want to build that career for you. In fact, the reality today is publishers and even agents don't want to look at you unless you actually don't need them. Now, that seems very counterintuitive, but it is the truth. The word platform, which everybody talks about now, wasn't even something that was important until we had these consolidations going on, where we wound up with the big five, which may soon actually become the big four. That's when platform and what you brought to the table became so significant and paramount. And then what is an author to do? You want to be focused on your writing, and that's very understandable. And you want your product to be top notch. That's why I also have micro-publishing media for editorial assistance and consultation. There's a lot of competition. So your submission product really needs to be professionally edited. However, regardless of any of this, in the old days, the only way for an author to have any kind of platform was to go out and do speaking engagements. Maybe you were on talk shows. If you were really blessed, you had a talk show, or you were a regular guest on a talk show, because we were looking at broadcast media. And what authors today still don't completely understand is that you are in a better position than ever before, because you can establish a platform using online marketing and strategy, and you can show that there is a solid market for the book that you want to write, and B, you can already establish your online presence using strategy and technique so that people can find you and that people can know who you are, and that you rise throughout cyberspace as someone that people want to know and that publishers also want to publish. So where does Author Branding Solutions come in? First of all, I really want to emphasize, I've been in publishing the industry for 30 years. I've personally written 13 nonfiction books. My most recent, thankfully, was a bestseller. We didn't quite make New York Times, but it was a bestseller memoir, but it was lightning in a bottle. The subject matter was totally on time. I couldn't have designed it better if I had, written one of those storyboard or wish boards to say, I want a book that's extremely topical. I want it timely. I want a first person subject who has never told her story, and I want everybody to want it. Well, everything fell into place. And that book is a creative nonfiction memoir of the youngest member of the Manson family. So for those of you who write memoir or are understanding why a book like this would have been so timely, It was published by William Morrow, which is a division of HarperCollins, on October 24th. And this man, the most face of evil, notorious cult leader, serial killer, he wound up dying on November 20th. I couldn't have planned it that way. So this was, I do think some things in publishing are luck, but marketing, branding, and being a professional is not luck. It's strategy. So we have an approach that's very comprehensive. After I've been a literary agent, I've been a, published author, an editor, and I wound up examining the changes that were happening in the industry and why everybody was so concerned about the digital explosion, meaning Amazon and other online book retailers. We had digital books now, ebooks. All of these things were changing, and it was just rattling everyone. So what I did is I studied digital marketing strategy, social media strategy. And then since I was actually running this new business, I tied it all together with entrepreneurship. And I realized that I was one of the few, if any, people from publishing, because along with the digital explosion, there was a huge shift in marketing and publicity. Went from push, 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 where we're going to give you name recognition. We're going to, just push things in people's faces. And we're going, for example, back in the earliest days of advertising, when newspapers were first developed and radio, the company would tell you what was wrong with you, what you needed. For example, you don't smell very good, so use our soap. Or if you want to look cool, smoke our cigarettes or whatever. And thank God we don't do those advertisements anymore. But it was always, we are going to tell you what you need. We're going to fulfill what you need, and we're going to barrage you. Well, the shift happened in marketing with the cyberspace, social media, and all of that, where people decided they wanted to trust other people. And so social media means creating trust so that you can get to know people. It involves engagement. It's not all hype. So that is what's called pull marketing. And it's a very different mindset. Early on with social media, a lot of people who are over 30 thought it just meant I'm going to post this, I'm going to post that. And what people were missing is the strategy behind it. You don't want to just post, 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 because it's a time suck and you don't get any results. So what I did is, thank goodness, I was able to learn a lot of these things and pull together a top-notch team, because we have the publishing background, we have the digital side of things, the technical side of things, and we also have author advocacy. So we're giving you tools to have your online presence. We drill down into exactly what your message is, because a lot of times when I'm editing a book or choosing a book to represent, when I was working with the agency, what I saw that was missing was a clear understanding of who is going to read the book. So I wanted to also point out, just so you know, we know publishing. This book is in its 28th edition. This is a book that our literary agency and my husband puts out every year, which is all about the realities of the publishing industry. So we start with this. We know publishing. And then we also produced this book. It's in its third edition, which has helped maybe over 250,000 writers understand how to approach the publishing industry. And when I do book proposal consultation, the biggest problem I see is where the authors don't know who their real market is. They'll say things like, every woman should read this book. They'll say things like, it should be a bestseller. I should be on, well, it used to be Oprah. But all of these things are not scientifically proven. We can, with our team, we can give you real data that you can prove your market, you can find your market, and you know how to reach them. We give you, for example, a completely customized website that is your real estate, because the very first thing we do now as literary agents or as publishers is we Google you. And if you have a very old website, or if you're not ranking, or you're showing no activity, we're going to look at you and say, well, who is this person? But with author branding and the way we do it, you will have an active presence. We do it from every single side. We do the content so that if people come to your website, they stay there. That's called bounce rate. We want people to go to your website and see really great content, get to know you, want to read your book, even if your book isn't out. You want to pre-sell it. If you're already someone who has a great publisher, you know for a fact that your books are not going to move unless you are doing something in addition to what your publisher is doing. So with the author branding, we also do a real, it's kind of a magic trick, but we've discovered a way to use search engine optimization really specifically to find who is looking for what it is that you're writing about. A lot of people say they understand SEO, but they don't do it the way we do it, because we are from publishing. We're also from journalism. So when we're writing your marketing copy, we also understand what constitutes a good story. And everything today is about story. We are creating your persona, your online persona, and then you use it everywhere, whether it's through an active blog. Then we also go into the back end of your website. And personally, I don't do that. My team does that because it's very technical, and it's not a trick. It's scientific. It's computer science, and we can figure out how it's basically, if you only have a website, and you've put together something, it looks really nice, it's invisible unless it's being acknowledged by the search engines. So we provide that aspect of the big picture. And then we also have social media marketing, and it's much more than just posting. There's a whole brand picture. There's when you post, what you post. We need to find where your readers are hanging out. We know what they're, and it's not a trick. It's not, we're not violating anybody's their privacy. We just are using data to figure out what they want to read and then help them find it. It's a two-way street. If you're writing a really good book and you want people to know about it, and your publisher is investing in you and they want people to know about your book. Right now, we don't know the future of box stores and bookstores. They're still viable, but still, people research. Their first part of their buying funnel happens online. They're going to look at books. They're going to look at their neighbors' opinions about books. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look maybe at excerpts, whatever. They're going to start making their buying decision. And then in order for them to convert into a buyer, they need to be sure, because they are looking, they only have so much entertainment time. They're looking for good books if they're readers. So you need to help them. and you don't want to be invisible. You want people to be able to find you, find your work. This is the best way in today's world for you to be a successful author. It's worth the time, it's worth the investment, and it's worth having the experts do it for you. It's not that we create something that isn't tapered to who you are and your sensibility. It's totally customized. We get to know you, we get to know your work. We look at you through the eyes of the reader, we look at you through the eyes of the publishers. We look at you to make you the most professional business, because that's what you're creating. You are creating a business of you as an author. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you check out authorbranding.solutions.com. You can always sign up for a consultation. We can talk to you about where you are with your publishing, or if you're even looking to know what to do about your publishing. And of course, we can help you every step of the way. And we can even consult with you on making irresistible book proposals. So thank you again. Enjoy this wonderful summit. And I hope to talk with you in the future and help you to become a successfully branded author.